What is up, FA Nation? This is Kevin Tompkins here, back with another Fantasy Alarm Target Report bullet points for Week 8. We just got through Week 7 last night, the final game, Minnesota and San Francisco, which the Vikings did win. We have a lot to get into as far as actionable information that you can take with you to your fantasy football leagues. So let's get into that. But before we do, make sure you are dropping a like and subscribe to the Fantasy Alarm YouTube channel. As well, my Target Report on Thursdays on fantasyalarm.com. There will be a link down below in the description. So let's take a look at some of the positive trends that we are approaching in fantasy football, how to play them in Week 8. If you've paid attention to the Target Report on fantasyalarm.com this season, you'll know my disdain for the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver carousel that's been spinning around and around. In the massive rotation for the Chiefs that has spanned 8 players, one receiver stands out above the rest, and that's Rashee. Some injuries to players like Justin Watson and Kadarius Toney have opened up pockets of time on the field, and while some others like Justin Ross have seen some increases in routes per dropback, nobody has done more or deserved more routes per game than Rice. He's also been the most consistent of all the Chiefs wide receivers. In Week 7, Rice had a season-high 65% route participation and put up his third straight double-digit fantasy point performance in a row. Paired with his consistency, Rice has been by far the most efficient Chiefs wide receiver on a per-route basis, with a season-long 2.58 yards per route run and an elite 29% targets per route run rate. With middling performances by Sky Moore, Marquez Valdes-Scantling's disappointing start that you could have set your watch to, and Toney's inability to stay on the field, and be anything more than a line of scrimmage gadgety player that's now competing with those targets with new/old Chief Mecole Hardman, Rice has the inside track to be a factor in fantasy with his trajectory. This offense needs some kind of stability at wide receiver to play off of Travis Kelce and the best quarterback on the planet, Patrick Mahomes. Rice has the best chance to be that for the remainder of 2023. I'm happy with him as my wide receiver 3 for fantasy, knowing that he's going to be targeted when he's on the field with upside for much more down the line. After James Conner left in Week 5 with a knee injury, Emari Demercado filled in solidly for the rest of the game with 10 carries, 45 yards, and a touchdown. Conner was placed on IR before Week 6, and in that week, Demercado still got the lion's share of snaps and routes, but only saw 2 of 20 carries and 1 of 4 targets, splitting with Keontae Ingram and the veteran Damian Williams. We thought that this backfield would be pretty murky until Conner got back into the lineup. Then Week 7 happened. Demercado saw a whopping 80% of snaps and 74% of routes, 13 of 14 running back carries, plus 5 targets, as he dominated utilization for the Cardinals. Ingram was active, but did not play one single offensive snap, as he only saw time on special teams. Demercado looks locked into most running backs' opportunities going forward, with Damian Williams spelling him until Conner returns. While Demercado is likely a high-end RB3 with matchups against Baltimore and Cleveland on deck, Demercado will still get 12 to 15 carries each week and a handful of targets. You can bet on that type of utilization from Demercado in your flex spot for now. So Josh Downs has been a stud for weeks now, but it's possible you haven't heard much about him, or he could be easily dismissed because he's playing for the Indianapolis Colts and catching passes from Gardner Minshew. It's been several seasons since we've been able to start multiple Colts pass catchers in fantasy as weekly starts, but we're at that point now with Michael Pittman and now Josh Downs. There's some concern about Downs being a primary slot guy, but those are squashed as he's played exactly 0 snaps in 2 wide receiver sets this season per Pro Football Focus, but the Colts play 11 personnel on at least 3/4 of their offensive snaps, making it much more comfortable to start him going forward. Downs has eclipsed 80% routes per dropback in 5 straight weeks, has scored 13 plus fantasy points in his last 3 games, and the only 2 games where Downs has 3 or fewer receptions were games Anthony Richardson started. Of course, Anthony Richardson on IR for the rest of the season. Make no mistake, you can lock Downs in as a weekly fantasy starter, and he's looking like a solid bet at the current time to be a top 24 wide receiver in fantasy this season.